Hi, are you ready for our Lego Bible story? I have my Legos all ready. I hope you have yours too. And I have my Lego-sized Jesus to help us with our story today. Today's story comes from the Gospel of John, one of those first 4 books of the New Testament. And the Passover was near. That was a holiday celebrated every year. So Jesus went to Jerusalem. At the temple, he found people selling cattle and sheep and doves and money changers seated at the tables. So he made a whip out of cords and he drove them all out of the temple, both the sheep and the cattle. And he poured out the coins of the money changers and overturned their tables. And he told the people who were selling the doves, "Take these out of here. Stop making my Father's house into a marketplace." His disciples remembered that it had been written in the scripture, "Zeal for your house will consume me." Then the Jews said to him, "What sign can you show us for doing this?" And Jesus answered them, "Destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up." The Jews then said, "This temple has been under construction for 46 years, and you will raise it up in 3 days?" But Jesus was speaking of the temple of his body. After he was raised from the dead, his disciples remembered that he'd said this, and they believed the scripture and the word that Jesus had spoken. So the Passover was a really important festival, and it was celebrated every year. And so that people would come together and they would remember when God had passed over their houses and their children were spared, and it was the night when they then fled into the wilderness, escaping from the slavery that they had experienced in Egypt. But Jesus comes into the temple, and there were all different people selling things. So part of it is that people would have been making sacrifices. So then if you did something wrong, then there were different things you were supposed to bring and sacrifice, and then that would kind of make things right. But there were also people there who would take advantage of the people who were coming and cheat them or make them think that the stuff that they brought wasn't good enough. And Jesus came to the temple and was upset. And this is the one time in the scripture where we hear that he got really angry. I wonder if any of you get really angry sometimes. I wonder if it helps to hear that even Jesus lost his temper. I wonder what he was thinking when he got there and things weren't the way they were supposed to be. And he was busy talking about in 3 days he would raise it up again. So Jesus was getting ready to be killed. And he came to the temple and all this, I guess, nonsense was going on. And so he had a whip. It's going to be his whip. I don't know if I have a smaller one. And he overturned the tables, and he drove all the cattle out. I wonder what people thought when they saw that happening. I wonder if anybody was kind of cheering it on, if they'd been cheated and they saw Jesus upending all this stuff. I wonder what the poor cattle thought as they were being kind of chased out. I call those, the little ones could be our cattle. Were you ever so angry that you just wanted to turn everything upside down? I wonder what it feels like that Jesus was that angry too. Jesus in the scripture talked about what would happen, that in 3 days he would raise the temple again. In other scripture, he talks about that he's going to die and be killed and rise again, but nobody seems to understand what he's talking about. I wonder what it would have been like to hear those words. I wonder what his disciples thought when they saw what he was doing and how he was turning everything upside down. He upended the tables and drove out all the cattle and poured out the change. In this case, he knocked them all over. I don't know if that happened. But they probably felt like they were knocked over. I wonder, when Jesus said, "Stop making my Father's house like a marketplace," if he meant that things shouldn't be sold in church, or that people shouldn't be cheated in the selling, or made to feel that what they had wasn't enough. I wonder. When the people asked him, "What sign do you have for doing this?" I wonder if they were looking for, if he had like a letter that said he was allowed to do this. I wonder what they thought about in 3 days he would build the temple. I think they were really confused when they said that temple had been under construction for 46 years, sorry. And somebody was going to fix it in 3 days. I wonder if you've ever waited for construction of anything and it takes such a long time. I wonder what it was like for his disciples when they realized after he was killed and rose again that that's what he was talking about. Did you ever have a time where all the things that you've known kind of connected? And you're like, oh, that's what that meant? I wonder if the disciples had a lot of those moments. I wonder where you are in this story, or what's the most important part. I wonder what you will build with your Legos, or if you'll enjoy kind of clearing everything out.